in the cold darkness of the Arctic, as the world let out a sigh of relief after the thunderous Arctic Blitz. A silent but deadlier attack was launched from Alaska. The B-21 Raiders, the stealth phantoms of the U.S. Air Force, quietly left the runway, carrying in their bays GBU-57 MOP bombs, weapons capable of flattening underground steel fortresses. Severomorsk, the steel heart of the Russian Northern Fleet, erupted violently, transforming into a raging sea of fire and utter chaos. A series of continuous explosions shook the very depths of the earth as shockwaves tore through the air. Hundreds of lives were lost amid agonizing screams. Countless families forever lost their loved ones, and the cold Arctic region, forever scarred, was left to burn in a pile of ashes. This was not merely a retaliatory airstrike. It was a step in a cunning plan, aimed at shattering the fragile balance of power in the Arctic. Behind the bombs dropped that night, could this be a declaration of a bloody Cold War unlike any in history? The world holds its breath, waiting for the moment when the truth will be revealed or disaster will begin. Ghostly B-21 takes flight, a fateful Arctic night. September 14th, 2025, while the city of Anchorage was still shrouded in the freezing darkness of the Arctic night, the atmosphere inside Elmendorf-Richardson Air Force Base, Alaska, was as tense as a guitar string. Floodlights flashed intermittently, reflecting off the bodies of B-21 Raiders, the U.S. Air Force's most advanced war machines, from the maintenance bays to the flight control room. Every action was carried out with high speed and meticulous preparation. The B-21 Raider, an icon of 6th-generation stealth power, is a fusion of the latest technology and the strictest defense secrets, more than a bomber. The B-21 is a monster soaring over the Arctic, with the ability to penetrate deep into enemy territory without a trace. It's ultra-long range, capable of carrying a massive payload including various precision-guided bombs and cruise missiles, makes it the sharpest tool in the U.S. arsenal. Inside the weapons bay, GBU-57B massive ordnance penetrator MOP bombs, weighing up to 13.6 tons, were neatly arranged on their racks. Each bomb is a feat of reinforced concrete penetration technology, designed to demolish underground military bunkers and harden subterranean infrastructure, with the ability to penetrate dozens of meters of concrete with absolute precision. These bombs are the deadliest spear the U.S. Air Force possesses. The decision to launch was not made lightly. It was a direct response to the Arctic Blitz surprise attack, a raid by two 160s and 100 Kinzhal missiles aimed squarely at the U.S. Patuxent radar base in Greenland, which crippled the North American Early Warning Network. The aftermath of that attack shook the entire Arctic defense system, forcing Washington to take decisive action to restore balance and send a strong deterrent message to Moscow. In a strategic briefing room at the Pentagon, military leaders analyzed intelligence data from satellites, drones, and ground sources. The majority of reports indicated that Russia's Northern Fleet, particularly the Severomorsk naval base on the Barents Sea coast, was the command center and a critical node in Moscow's Arctic military plan. This was also where a large number of Borei and Yasen-class nuclear submarines were concentrated, along with heavy weapons depots and key logistical facilities. Striking Severomorsk would not only weaken the Russian Navy's capabilities, but also serve as a way for the U.S. to preempt any potential expansion of influence and military pressure in the Arctic. Consequently, Elmendorf-Richardson was chosen as the staging ground for the B-21 squadron, the stealthy ghosts that would tear through the Arctic night, unleashing an unstoppable storm of destruction. Technicians performed final checks on the weapons systems, ensuring all electronic, guidance, and launch devices were in perfect working order. Experienced pilots donned their high-altitude pressure suits, connected to a secure communication network, and checked every parameter on the control panels. The clicking of seatbelts and hurried footsteps blended with the roar of generators and the cold, crisp air characteristic of the polar region. Few words were exchanged, as all eyes were on the screen displaying the pending launch order. Outside the windows, light snow fell gently, reflecting the airfield's floodlights and creating a scene that was both serene and suffocating. Everyone understood that this mission was not just an airstrike, but a tacit declaration of war between two superpowers in an increasingly heated Arctic. When the launch signal was given, 4 B-21s simultaneously started their engines, their roar shattering the silence of the Alaskan night. Trails of gray-white smoke followed each one, blending into the cold air as the war machines hurtled forward like unstoppable supersonic monsters. In their bays, the MOP bombs awaited the moment they would be released, carrying the power to shatter the most hardened bunkers, destroy underground nuclear submarine pens, and cripple Russia's command and defense systems. They were not just weapons, but an undeniable statement from the US that it was ready to respond decisively and comprehensively. From Alaska to Severomorsk lay thousands of miles of ice and snow, passing through strictly controlled airspace and radar surveillance. But the B-21, with its stealth capabilities and advanced electronic technology, glided like a ghost, evading every electronic eye with each passing second. The airstrike drew closer, ushering in an uneasy night where the fate of the Arctic and possibly the world hung on the brink of an unpredictable war. Sweeping through the blizzard, the journey passed Russian radar. Following the thunderous roar of the 4 B-21 Raiders, the formation immediately shifted into a sequential flight state, preparing for their challenging journey across the Arctic. The sky was still pitch black, and a layer of fog clung to the ground, clinging to the runways and equipment around Elmendorf-Richardson Air Force Base. But high above, these stealthy phantoms had already begun their fateful voyage. Unlike a typical flight, this time the B-21s had to exploit every slight advantage of the terrain and weather to avoid detection by Russia's advanced radar systems. The pilots skillfully reduced altitude, gliding through icy hills and over ice floes like silver snakes in the cold darkness. The stealth capabilities and modern electronic warfare systems were utilized to their fullest, turning these aircraft into invisible, elusive predators. Russian radar stations along the Barents Sea coast and the Arctic Ocean were on high alert, monitoring for any suspicious signs. However, with the assistance of electronic warfare, dense jamming signals were broadcast, distracting and disorienting the surveillance systems. Throughout the 2,000-kilometer journey, the B-21s maneuvered through each layer of air defense, both avoiding and misleading, like ghosts in a blizzard. On board, pilots and technical crews constantly monitored data from their scanning and target acquisition equipment. The order to fire had been pre-approved, but every passing second was a critical moment. The nearly 14-ton GBU-57 B-MOP bombs were ready to be dropped on carefully selected targets underground ammunition depots, nuclear submarine pens for the Bore and Yasin classes, and the Northern Fleet's command and communication centers. The MOPs guidance technology was maximally enhanced with a GPS inertial system and optical sensors, allowing the bombs to punch through the thickest layers of reinforced concrete, collapsing bunkers and almost completely destroying their targets. The destructive power of each bomb was equivalent to hundreds of tons of TNT, enough to shake a large area beneath the ground. The B-21 formation closed in on Severomorsk, using the darkness and harsh weather conditions as cover. The thick snow and biting cold winds helped the aircraft hide under a natural veil. All navigation lights were turned off to avoid enemy radar detection, and the entire operation was conducted in a breathtaking silence. The decisive moment was drawing near. Each B-21 prepared to get into position, its bomb release system activated. Everything was ready for a deadly strike where only precision and power would determine survival. The faint light of the Arctic sky reflected on the aircraft's bodies, like a cold reminder this was not just a mission, but a vital one to maintain the strategic balance in the world's northernmost region. Severomorsk Inferno, the fury of the MOP bombs. The Arctic night, usually serene and cold, suddenly transformed into a living hell. In the pitch-black sky, plumes of anti-aircraft fire shot up like a forest of silver light, screaming through the thick blizzard and drawing streaks across the cold air. S-400 and Pantsir S-1 launchers at the Severomorsk base fired non-stop, unleashing a barrage of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and interceptor rounds at a terrifying speed. The hissing of missiles and the roar of engines intertwined with the wail of sirens, creating a symphony of utter chaos. But from high altitudes, the B-21 Raider Phantoms glided calmly through, concealed within the cold, snowy curtain. The superior stealth technology combined with electronic warfare continuously jammed Russian radar, making it impossible to pinpoint their exact coordinates. Early warning systems blared relentlessly, but it was too late to halt the B-21 squadron's advance. On board, the nearly 14-ton GBU-57 B-MOP bombs, the steel spearheads, were ready to be dropped. when the bombs fell. A series of explosions created seismic shocks that rocked Severomorsk. The blasts echoed in the frigid air as sparks and black smoke billowed in the columns, forming eerie lights in the starry sky. Even the most robust structures could not withstand the terrifying force. Inside the base, hundreds of soldiers were in a life-or-death struggle. Many were struck by shockwaves and debris before they could react, falling amidst the chaotic screams. Air defense operators in the command room were at a breaking point as communication systems started to fail and a slew of equipment was destroyed or lost power. Casualties from this horrifying night numbered over 150 people, including many senior officers who died trying to maintain command during the firestorm. Cries of grief, pleas for help, and the staccato of gunfire merged into a tragic and bloody scene. Medics tried to provide aid, transporting the wounded through the ruins, while defensive combat teams persevered, returning fire with every remaining asset. Beneath the chaotic sky, Borei and Yasin-class submarines, symbols of Russia's nuclear power, were hit directly. Some were completely destroyed, with immeasurable loss of life and equipment. The remaining vessels were heavily damaged and forced to retreat in a crippled state, unable to complete their missions. The night was torn apart by explosions that destroyed large ammunition depots, hangars, and logistical facilities. The command center, with its most sophisticated communication systems, fell silent, severely disrupting any further response plans from the Russian forces. Despite a fierce counterattack, the Russian air defense system could not withstand such a coordinated and precise assault. The roar of combat engines in the air, the whistle of passing rounds, and the continuous burst of flares created a chaotic yet dramatic tableau. The battle lasted over 30 minutes, with the tumultuous sounds of the firestorm, screams, and incessant sirens, as the last B-21s withdrew from the danger zone. A bastion of steel for Russia's northern fleet was now nothing but ashes, rubble, and the sorrowful cries of the survivors. The Arctic ablaze, global tensions peak. Smoke and fire still billowed from the Severomorsk base, but the atmosphere in command rooms in both Moscow and Washington had shifted from chaos to extreme tension. The unprecedented losses at Russia's naval center forced leaders to make landmark decisions. In Russia, President Vladimir Putin convened the Federal Security Council that very night. Generals discussed the necessary military response, weighing a powerful retaliation against a more restrained approach to avoid a full-scale war. A heavy atmosphere hung over the room as data on damages and casualties was presented. Russia's strategic missile forces were placed on the highest alert, and Iskander and S-400 systems across the Arctic were put on heightened vigilance. Several attack and nuclear submarines were ordered to start up and leave port, ready for combat or to pose a threat to their adversary. Meanwhile, in Washington, the U.S. President and the Secretary of Defense closely monitored the situation through continuously updated intelligence systems. The Department of Defense ordered the war alert level raised to DEFCON 2, preparing for all potential conflict scenarios. Special forces and aircraft carriers in the North Atlantic were deployed in support, while air bases in Alaska and Europe increased their training and patrol activities. NATO convened an emergency meeting in Brussels, emphasizing the need for unity and coordination in response to the unprecedented tensions in the Arctic. Member nations agreed to increase their military presence in the polar region and surrounding seas, while also cooperating closely on intelligence sharing and logistical support. In coffee shops, press rooms, and on social media worldwide, public opinion was in an uproar. People worried about a new war taking shape, and images of the B-21s and MOP bombs evoked fear of an unprecedented level of destruction. Military analysts warned that the Arctic was becoming an unavoidable flashpoint, where the confrontation between the two superpowers could trigger a new Cold War, or worse, a direct conflict. Night slowly settled over the Arctic, but the cold could not extinguish the fire of tension blazing in command rooms and on global television screens. And as the B-21s returned to base one by one, across the ocean, Russia's next moves were being planned, full of determination and gravity. Everyone understood that this was not just a simple confrontation, but a battle of strategy, power, and survival, where every passing moment could change the fate of the world. All the above content is simulated, hypothetical, strategic, and analytical, It is not intended to incite violence, political bias, or provoke military action or war. The content is purely a personal hypothetical and analytical simulation of a potential event. Any misinterpretation will not be accepted. We are not responsible for any understanding or application of the content. Viewers should critically evaluate, verify information, and engage with the content selectively. Thank you very much for staying with us until the end. If you are passionate about military affairs, enjoy analysis, and like to formulate hypotheses, please stay with our channel. If you found this video interesting, hit like and subscribe to not miss any daily updates from us. Now, you can watch some of our latest and most popular videos that are currently on the screen. Goodbye and see you in the next video.